Engel at great length with that pillar of strength comment. Mr. Braun.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Ranking Member Berman, and other distinguished members of the committee. Let me tell you right up front, Madam Chairman, I'm not an expert on Iran, and I'm not an academic. I'm a practitioner. I spent 35 years in law enforcement, 24 with the DEA, and was fortunate enough to ascend through the ranks and help lead the agency as its chief of operation for 4 years and chief of intelligence for about acting chief of intelligence for about a year before that. So I'm speaking to you from that perspective. And a lot of that time, over that 35 years, was spent in some very tough locations and environments around the globe, and by the way, in fact, in this town as well. So what I do know a great deal about, though, is how organized crime, terrorist and insurgent groups operate and how they collaborate around the world. So how does that relate to this hearing focused on Iran and their agenda here in the Western Hemisphere? As you've said, Madam Chairman and others on the committee, just 2 days ago, the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, testified before the Senate Intelligence Committee on Iran's appeared to at least to be poised to strike the United States and our interests abroad. How could Iran ever pull off attacks on the United States right here at home? Well, I can assure you that if that day comes, two of Iran's proxies will be leading the charge. It'll be Quds Force and it will be Hezbollah. And the reason for that is because both organizations are now heavily involved in both the global cocaine and the global heroin trade. And because of that growing activity in this post-9/11 environment that we're all still living in, because of that growing, because of their growing involvement in that activity, far more of their terrorist fighters are now in our neighborhood and more on our doorstep. It's brought them into this part of the world in a large way. You can rest assured that that these organizations are working hard. They're masters at this. They've done it successfully in many places around the world. But you can rest assured that they're developing close relationships with organized crime cartels, the most powerful organized crime cartels that have ever operated anywhere in the world. And those are the Colombian and Mexican cartels. And that, by the way, would include the FARC, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, also a designated terrorist organization. When you take into consideration, and this has been mentioned by a couple of you, that the Mexican cartels now dominate drug trafficking throughout throughout the world, as far as cocaine is concerned. But they also dominate the drug trade in the United States. The best estimates is that they're well entrenched in over 250 cities around our country. If anyone thinks for a moment that the Hezbollah and the Quds Force has not recognized the strategic importance of that, of those cartels being in our communities in 250 cities, and all of the infrastructure that's been built over many, many years to support that activity, then quite frankly, and I don't want to be too crude here, but if folks aren't thinking about that, then they're stupid or at least they're naive, because I guarantee you the Quds Force and Hezbollah have recognized the strategic importance of all that. Interestingly enough, the DNI used an Iranian plot to assassinate the Saudi Arabian ambassador here in Washington as a key example to support his position that Iran may well be poised to attack here in the homeland. The Quds Force operative, or a Quds Force operative and an Iranian American attempted to recruit one or more members of the ultra-violent Mexican Los Zetas drug trafficking organization to carry out that attack with all things, for God's sakes, with all things of a car bomb right here in Washington, D.C. If that attack had taken place, that car bomb most assuredly would have taken out more than just the Saudi Arabian ambassador. And I don't want to do your jobs for you. And I certainly don't want to speak for you, but I would suggest strongly, the way I see it, that's nothing short of an act of war, especially in this 9/11 era that we're continuing to live through and work through. Thankfully, by the way, that the DEA and the FBI foiled that plot, and I believe potentially saved a lot of lives. I cannot think of a better example that the director could have used as a byproduct that comes about from the growing confluence of drugs and terror, something that I've talked about for the past 10 years, and quite frankly, not a lot of folks were willing to listen in this town. Obviously, you are willing to listen, and I want to thank you for that, and thank you for your leadership for calling this committee hearing together today.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, no,
I didn't know if that was a pause.
No, it was just
pause.
just a pause to collect my thoughts. But thanks to that unwillingness and the growing drugs terror nexus, we now have far greater numbers of Quds Force and Hezbollah terrorists in our neighborhood and on our doorstep, as I've said. Finally, that same Quds Force that I've been talking about, that is obviously prepared to commit acts of war against us right here in our homeland, is also the same Quds Force that is holding the keys to Iran's strategic missile program, so many experts believe. So I think we need to be asking ourselves another very tough, important question as a result of that. Who's going to be holding the keys to Iran's nuclear arms program when that albatross hatches in the not-too-distant future? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Shifter, welcome.